Death is not the end. They are still with us, as long as we do not forget them.
Welcome back, everyone. This will be my full Marvel What If Episode 5 video for Marvel Zombies. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs to Marvel Comics. It's a big storyline that they're doing from the comics based around the events of Avengers Infinity War. Perfectly balanced is all zombie universes should be. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I'll be doing videos for all the episodes this season. They've already confirmed that they're going to do What If Season 2 and hopefully release those episodes next year as well. But careful for spoilers. If you have not seen this episode yet, we'll be talking about everything. So we'll just start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments. And there were many WTF moments. Probably one of the biggest things about this episode, aside from just the fact that they're actually doing the zombie storyline, is that it's the first canonical time in the MCU that someone has uttered the name Uncle Ben, Spider-Man no less. Like, he literally mentions Uncle Ben out loud during the end of the episode. He also references his dead parents, which I think is also an MCU first. When he was talking about this during Captain America Civil War, he never actually said Uncle Ben's name out loud to Iron Man. He just referenced his death, saying bad things happen sometimes, but he never said the words Uncle Ben. So this is the first time that he did that. But if you're not familiar with Marvel Zombies, it's sort of an Elseworlds type of story, non-canonical to the main 616 Marvel universe. But would you be surprised if I said that the original Marvel Zombies storyline was written by Robert Kirkman of Walking Dead fame? And obviously the physics of how Marvel Zombies work, how they exist, is very different from the Walking Dead version of zombies or zombies that you see during other franchises. I would say the way the Marvel Zombies work, the way you explain how their powers, their abilities work, is very similar to the zombies of Zack Snyder's Day of the Dead franchise, like Army of the Dead. Like the very fast, highly cognitive version of zombies. Because in the Marvel Universe, the zombies can still use all the powers that they had when they were still alive, or their abilities, like Iron Man can still use all of his armor the same way, Doctor Strange and Wong can still use their spells the same way, Scarlet Witch can use her powers the same way. And even though they don't really do it that much during this episode, Marvel Zombies can still talk somewhat, albeit altered, slurred kind of speech. And within Marvel Comics, the Marvel Zombie storyline becomes a multiverse storyline, like this What If is a multiverse storyline spinning out of the Loki series. Even though at the end of the episode, the Watcher only references them tanking this version of the universe, like this universe will turn into zombies, but they don't reference it spilling into another universe. In the comics, the Marvel Zombies do start traveling the multiverse, converting the rest of the multiverse into zombies. But the Watcher narrates the intro explaining the very different version of Avengers Infinity War, explaining what would have happened if the Hulk came back, being sent by the Bifrost back to Earth by Heimdall, but finding that the Earth had turned into a version of Marvel Zombies when he returned, because of what happens with Janet Van Dyne in the quantum virus inside the quantum realm. There are a couple minor changes to the main MCU timeline here, but for the most part, up to the events of about Captain America Civil War, everything played out the exact same way that it did during the original Marvel movies. And if it wasn't clear, pretty much all the MCU actors came back to voice their characters. There were only a couple exceptions, and obviously a couple of them don't talk, like Scarlet Witch didn't speak, Iron Man didn't speak, but like Chadwick Boseman came back to do this version of Black Panther, Paul Bettany came back to do Vision, Evangeline Lilly came back to do the Wasp, Denai Guerrera came back to do Okoye, even Jon Favreau came back to do the voice of Happy Hogan. Sebastian Stan came back again to do this version of Bucky, but if you couldn't tell, this is not Tom Holland doing the voice of this version of Spider-Man, the zombie hunter Spider-Man. I believe because Tom Holland was too busy filming his movies last year, like he was filming both Spider-Man No Way Home and the Uncharted movie back to back, so I think he was just too busy to come do the voice for this. But Mark Ruffalo is also back as the Hulk. Remember, he showed up during episode 3 during the events of the Incredible Hulk for that version of the Avengers story. So he was playing the Edward Norton version of the Hulk during that episode. But this time, because we're up to the events of Avengers Infinity War, we're into full Mark Ruffalo era Hulk. So he crashes through the Sanctum just like he did during Avengers Infinity War, and to make another Walking Dead reference, it's like New York City has gone full Atlanta from season 1 when Rick Grimes came to Atlanta. You have this massive cityscape, but no one is there, and it's just super quiet. They have that same funny scene of the Hulk not wanting to come out when Ebony Maw and Cole Obsidian come down from the Q ship. Remember, events still play out pretty similarly to what they did during Avengers Infinity War on the Thanos side of things, at least up until the end of the episode, that big twist reveal. Except this time, Doctor Strange opens a portal, and this is a bit of a reference to Avengers Endgame with the portal scene. They play the big Avengers theme the same way that they played the Portals theme song when everyone's coming through the portals. but it's a very dark twist on that scene because they come through and they're zombies, even though they obscure their faces, so you can't see. Like, Hulk also says, "You guys are totally screwed now," which is another reference to when Thor arrived during Avengers Infinity War, him yelling, "You're all screwed now." I love the way they play this for some dark humor too, like, get a little overkill there, guys, as you actually kind of see them gnawing on the Black Order, turning them into zombies too. They do the full reveal with Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation saving him from the Marvel zombies using some of the same tricks from the Thanos battle on Titan. The Cloak is even able to kill Zombie Wong, so go Cloak. R.I.P. Wong. Very creative use of portals, chopping his head off. And like I said, just from the way they behave, you can kind of tell the way Marvel zombies work. They can use all their abilities, they move really fast, they just hunger for human flesh. Then the horde of ants from Ant-Man and the Wasp shows up to clean up the rest of the zombies, consuming Doctor Strange, the Black Order. Wasp reveals herself, kills Iron Man, then saves Hulk with the Cloak of Levitation, and Spider-Man shows up. Very similar to the way that he showed up to save Iron Man during the original Avengers Infinity War movie. You notice the Watcher's silhouette shows up against the sky and explains how this Earth turned into Marvel zombies, doing the big flashback to Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym during the events of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So the whole idea here is that Janet Van Dyne was patient zero for this universe's Marvel zombies outbreak. The interesting thing too is that there's only one quantum realm in the multiverse, so theoretically, she could have exited the quantum realm at any random universe or point in that timeline, and that universe that she would have come out in would have become the first Marvel Zombies universe. And theoretically, through the use of their quantum technology, the real threat here is that the Marvel zombies should have the ability to spread through the multiverse. But if it wasn't clear, this wasn't somebody mysteriously creating the zombie virus and then giving it to her. She contracted it naturally. It's just like a quirk of the quantum realm. They have a very dark version of that reunion scene from Ant-Man and the Wasp when Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne come out of the quantum realm of their ship. Hope is obviously able to yeet herself away before she's bit, but they set up the whole head in a jar Scott Lang by having him get bit, just not on his head. Although the way Vision explains it later, he did turn into a zombie, and then he changed him back using the Mind Stone. But the reason why he wound up being a head in a jar is because he was only experimenting on human brains, so he didn't need the rest of Scott Lang's body to try and cure him. It's also kind of implied that Hank Pym ate a giant chunk of the rest of his body too. And then as the Watcher says, within about 24 hours, the entire Pacific Northwest section of the United States had been turned into zombies, and as Okoye then later explains, within the matter of a couple weeks, the rest of the planet had been covered in zombies, all but Wakanda, because of their big shield. At least apparently until Thanos showed up with 5 of the Infinity Stones. But he explains that it was basically the Avengers that inadvertently doomed the planet because they're so powerful. Who's going to stop the Avengers? Even though there are a couple other Avengers who are alive during the episode, it just allows them to quickly spread the virus because they still have all their abilities as the Avengers when they've been turned. You notice that they're mostly wearing their Avengers Infinity War costumes, with a couple big exceptions. So Hawkeye is there, and he's not under house arrest, and Black Panther is with them wearing a version of his suit from Captain America Civil War. Like, they're saying that in this universe, the Avengers either never broke up, like they never had their Civil War to begin with, or at least it didn't end as badly for them as it did in the main MCU universe. But they reveal that Black Panther actually survived for a little while up in San Francisco. And like I said, it was Chadwick Boseman coming back to do the voice of this Black Panther. The way he explains it though, the timeline for Black Panther in the episode is that they get attacked, and then a little while later, like Black Panther survives that, or manages to survive. Eventually, the zombie outbreak spreads, Scarlet Witch gets infected, then that's when Vision comes and rescues, quote-unquote, or kind of rescues, but not really rescues, Black Panther from the San Francisco area, so that he can slowly feed bits of Black Panther to zombie Scarlet Witch. Probably one of the bigger WTF moments from the episode. Apparently, Black Panther is now on the menu. They do their big Spider-Man rules montage with them playing it like Spider-Man made a home movie, like a YouTube video that he produced himself for the rules of how to survive a zombie apocalypse. And it plays a lot like the scene from Spider-Man Homecoming with him cosplaying as the different Avengers, just play acting, pretending to be the other Avengers. Also, big deal here, you notice that in the video, he's filming himself without his mask on, so whoever's theoretically watching this will learn his secret identity, but not that it matters that much because, as they explain, pretty much the entire world has turned into zombies, and he's only expecting the other Avengers characters or people that they rescue to be on their team to watch this video. So his secret identity is the least of his worries here. I also thought it was a little weird that he referenced Sex and the City when talking about New York City. Obviously the show takes place in New York City, but it just seems weird that a teenager like Spider-Man, even though he's a pop culture junkie, would think of Sex and the City first when he's thinking of New York City. Then he uses Happy Hogan for rule number 1, and it is Jon Favreau who came back to do the voice. Rule number 1 is always wear long sleeves because the viruses pass through saliva, not the actual bites themselves, which is why the Hulk doesn't immediately turn at the end of the episode when Banner almost gets bit on his arm, but the Hulk hulks out to save him. You notice he's got Happy wearing one of the funny t-shirts saying, "I'm not single, I'm saving myself for Thor." You also see that he's wearing the Gauntlet from one of Iron Man's suits. They wind up using that for the blam joke later in the episode. There's the joke about him not actually being happy, and his skills are driving because he started out as Iron Man's chauffeur, boxing because in the comics, Happy Hogan started out as a professional boxer before he became Tony Stark's chauffeur. They kind of reference that in the MCU movies during Iron Man 2 with that funny scene of him and Black Widow in the boxing ring where she kicks his ass. Then Kurt comes in from the Ant-Man movies, and it is David Dastmalchian coming back to do his voice. Most of the Marvel movie actors came back for this, just a couple exceptions. The reason why it says Slavic folklore and crime are his skills are because he's the one who was yelling about Baba Yaga during Ant-Man and the Wasp when Ghost showed up, and he also references that again later in the episode, talking about the witch Baba Yaga, mythologically, but as a reference to Scarlet Witch, who shows up as a zombie later. The crime skill is a reference because Ant-Man's crew, ex-con security, was a group of ex-convicts who used to pull heists together. For rule number 2, they use Winter Soldier, which is obviously a different version from the Bucky that we saw during episode 1. Rule number 2 is keeping up personal hygiene because zombies are attracted to the smell of human flesh. He's obviously super pissed off because they were trying to surprise him in the shower, but you do notice that the curtain is decorated with the Captain America flag pattern because he's a Captain America character. His skills are murder, and it is the vibranium version of his arm from Black Panther. Spider-Man calls him silent but deadly because Winter Soldier doesn't really talk that much, he just scowls most of the time. And the joke about him being a heavy sleeper is just a reference to him being in cryo storage for so long when Shuri was deprogramming him. Because from the events of Falcon and Winter Soldier we've seen, his PTSD causes him to have really bad sleep problems. They make all kinds of puns. Kurt makes a pun about his arm being super handy. Later when Head in a Jar Scott Lang shows up, it's just all puns, wall to wall. They use Sharon Carter for rule number 3, always aim for the head, which you could also call another Thor vs. Thanos Avengers Infinity War reference. You should have gone for the head. Also, in pretty much every zombie-related story, regardless of which kind of zombie you're talking about, headshots are usually the only way to stop them. Obviously, because of the timeline here, this version of Sharon Carter has not become the power broker yet. Spider-Man calls her the Blonde Bond, as in James Bond, because her skills are spycraft in the MCU. She was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. First Aid because she helped patch up Team Captain America during Civil War, and Eulogies because she also gave Peggy Carter's eulogy during Civil War. Then they do that funny transition with Okoye yelling at him, transitioning from them showing Hulk watching the video, like the perspective of Hulk watching the video, to them inside the train car base. She introduces herself to Banner, very similar to the scene of them meeting during Avengers Infinity War. She says she swore an oath to fight the outbreak a couple weeks ago after Black Panther disappeared. She says he went missing, which is meant to foreshadow the big twist where you find out he's still alive at the end of the episode. They have a joke about the beacon coming in on the wires, revealing that Spider-Man has used his webbing to create this base made up of train cars suspended in midair between the New York City high-rises. You notice they're using one of Iron Man's gauntlets as a projection device, and they decode that the person who they think has a cure for the virus is holed up in Camp Lehigh, New Jersey, which is the original base from the first Captain America movie where he trained before getting the super soldier serum. It was where they were keeping the Tesseract during the 1970s in the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in Avengers Endgame during the heist. That was where Howard Stark, young Hank Pym, and Arnim Zola were doing their research, and later in Captain America Winter Soldier, the same place where Arnim Zola had uploaded his consciousness into the computer database. In fact, in present day, Vision is using that same computer terminal bank for some of his research. The reason why Happy Hogan makes the New Jersey joke, like New Jersey sucks joke, is because Jon Favreau in real life is from New Jersey. In fact, there are actually a ton of high-level Marvel people that are from New Jersey, like Kevin Feige himself is also from New Jersey. They have a bunch of jokes about Happy being a chauffeur. Okoye calls him an Uber driver. No, it's a chauffeur, it's different. They do the same joke from Ant-Man and the Wasp with them making the car big again to take out one of the zombies. And when they take things to Grand Central, this is a big reference to Avengers Infinity War and the original Avengers movie. So the area that they're in right here is near where the original Avengers Tower used to be. Spider-Man starts referencing the rules of horror movies because Okoye wants to split the teams up. Later, she apologizes for trying to split them up. And even though she says they don't need horror movies in Wakanda because they have American reality shows, which I think is a reference to Survivor because they're literally trying to survive here. They actually do have horror movies in Wakanda, as they explained during the Black Panther movie. Their father was this huge fan of pop culture movies. Like Shuri says that he was a huge fan of Back to the Future because she makes the sneakers just like the sneakers from Back to the Future too. So if they've been watching those kinds of movies, they've also probably seen a lot of the big popular horror movies as well. Happy gets attacked by a bunch of birds, foreshadowing the Falcon attack, and when Sharon Carter makes fun of him for saying blam out loud when he fires Iron Man's hand cannon, this is actually a bit of a meta joke about actors in real life on the Marvel movies. A lot of times what'll happen is because the guns on movie sets don't make the regular sounds that normal guns would make in real life. When the actors are firing their fake guns in these action scenes, they'll make the sounds out loud sometimes, which is actually really bad. Like, they're not supposed to do that. They have the sounds of the guns in post-production later on. They also use the blam joke to set up the reversal when she kills him using the hand cannon and then takes it for herself, using it against zombie Hawkeye, and says blam herself, kind of a sad blam. They wind up using Spider-Man's webbing to create a massive slingshot to get the train moving, and like I said, I just referenced the Spider-Man 2 train fight. This is sort of like a reverse version of that, like using the tensile strength of his webbing to make it go instead of trying to stop it. Then the Cloak of Levitation saves Spider-Man, and Wasp references him growing into the cape look, like, looks good on you, kid, which is a reference to Spider-Man wearing a cape in the comics briefly. They also did a version of that joke during Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, like, Spider-Man does not wear a cape, but they also find a cape version of his costume from the comics later inside Spider-Man's lair. Zombie Captain America winds up taking out Sharon Carter, R.I.P., and they kind of do a setup line for "I could do this all day" when Winter Soldier says, "I think you've had enough, Cap." Then the Winter Soldier's end of the line dialogue is actually a reference to all the Captain America movies. During all the Captain America movies, there's a different version of the end of the line phrase that each one of them mentions to each other, and it's a reference to them sticking together, helping each other till the end of the line, till they die. Thus, in killing zombie Captain America, and also doing it on a train, this is metaphorically and literally the end of the line. He also takes Cap out using the same trick from Captain America Winter Soldier, where he catches the shield then reverses it on him, while Wasp takes out zombie Sharon Carter using a modified version of the Thanos method, going in her mouth. We'll call that a reverse Thanos. The twist being that she was infected while this happened and only has a little while before the virus turns her. As they continue to Lehigh, you see the Watcher's silhouette show up against the skyline again to watch it. And there's a ton of great Spider-Man scenes here with Hope Van Dyne. Maybe we'll see them get some scenes together in the live-action movies during Avengers 5. Then, like I said, during this scene, Spider-Man also mentions the name Uncle Ben out loud for the first time in the MCU, and his dead parents out loud. He also reveals during this speech that Aunt May has turned into a zombie at this point. Hope winds up sacrificing herself going giant to get them past the Horde, and this is actually a big comic book reference to Giant Woman. In the comics, Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, became Giant Woman for a period in the comics, and as the name implies, as you probably guessed, is the exact same effect when Hank Pym Ant-Man became Giant Man in the comics. Maybe we'll see live-action MCU Hope Van Dyne go giant during Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. There's also the idea of Cassie Lang's stature, and one of her trademark abilities is going giant, and they're doing Cassie Lang's stature during Ant-Man 3. Then Kirk makes the Baba Yaga reference again, but this time talking about the witch, the myth, and it's a reference to zombie Scarlet Witch showing up to attack them. They do a bunch of jump scare jokes with Spider-Man making more horror movie references, talking about jump scares, just as Vision then comes and jump scares them again. He explains how he's not in any danger because he is not made of human flesh, and he explains the effect that the Mind Stone has holding the other zombies at bay. And if it wasn't clear, he was not lying or misleading them about the actual Mind Stone cure. It was just that he was doing really terrible, terrible things, feeding Black Panther and other Avengers to zombie Scarlet Witch while he was developing a cure. He and Banner go all science bros together while they explain the quantum virus, and they reveal how he was able to successfully use it on Scott Lang, turning his head back into normal, which is how we get to Head in a Jar Ant-Man, which is kind of a Futurama reference. He makes a ton of Head in a Jar jokes. I've lost weight, don't worry, I won't let it go to my head. Like I said, it's kind of wall-to-wall puns from Ant-Man for the rest of the episode. So they explain their plan to broadcast Vision's Mind Stone cure from Wakanda using their satellite technology because it's so advanced, which Okoye confirms is the last human sanctuary on Earth because of the superior shield technology. Turns out they did not plan on a zombie Thanos with an Infinity Gauntlet though. They reveal the big WTF twist about him keeping Black Panther there, feeding bits of him to zombie Scarlet Witch like he's lost his leg already. Scarlet Witch breaks free, they reveal she hasn't eaten in days, and she goes full Baba Yaga, eating Kirk as he talks about Baba Yaga. The Cloak of Levitation winds up saving Scott Lang, so he kind of becomes a floating head in a jar for the rest of the episode. And to his credit, even though he's clearly gone nuts with love for Scarlet Witch, Vision does help them escape and winds up sacrificing himself, ripping the Mind Stone out, so that they can take it to Wakanda and theoretically use it to broadcast the signal. So that's why he ripped it out, because he didn't want to leave Scarlet Witch. killing himself the same way that Thanos killed him during Avengers Infinity War, ripping the Mind Stone out. Scott Lang makes a Harry Potter reference saying Wingardium Leviosa. Okoye then sacrifices herself to Scarlet Witch to help them escape, going out with a big Wakanda forever. But because Scarlet Witch is so powerful and the zombie horde is coming in on them, Winter Soldier then has to sacrifice himself to slow them down. She seems like she punts him a couple miles out of the way. But when she sees Vision's dead body, she does pause for a second and seem kind of sad, like she registers some emotion. So even though she's turned, she does have some of her human emotions left. But this is actually meant to be a reference to the original ending from Avengers Infinity War. You may have seen this deleted scene. I've done a video for it on my channel, so I'll post a link for that down in the description. But during Avengers Infinity War, originally, Banner was supposed to Hulk out from inside the Hulkbuster at the end of that final boss fight in Wakanda. It would have been him turning into Professor Hulk for the first time, sort of like the halfway combined version of Hulk and Banner. They actually filmed the scene legit and released it later as a deleted scene. Spider-Man references the rules of horror movies again when one of them says, "We've escaped prematurely, giant zombie Hope Van Dyne attacking them mid-air." And when Scott Lang says that's twice she saved me, the first time was during the first Ant-Man movie. And we get to see some really solid Spider-Man Black Panther scenes, and you do feel kind of heartbroken that we're never going to get to see a version of this play out in the live-action Marvel movies. Like, we'll never get to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man share scenes with Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. But he references his same speech from Captain America Civil War about death not being the end in Wakandan culture, talking about the ancestral plane. But the big twist WTF ending, probably one of the biggest moments of the episode, they reveal that Thanos has already invaded Wakanda where they're headed, having been turned into a zombie himself, and he has all the Infinity Stones except the Mind Stone, which they are now conveniently bringing to him without realizing it. So when the Watcher says that they're trying to save their planet at the cost of dooming the universe, they're referencing the snap. But because it's zombie Thanos, they're implying that his snap will turn the entire universe into Marvel zombies. Perfectly balanced is all zombie universes should be. But if you spotted any other big Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't mention in the video, just write them below in the comments. In my full What If Episode 6 video will post next week on Wednesday just like normal. Links for all my What If episode videos down in the description below. And there's a bunch of big trailers coming up this week too, like the Matrix 4 trailer. I'll do a video for that tomorrow. Make sure you have alerts enabled so you don't miss that. I've got a couple more big Shang-Chi videos and Avengers 5 videos because of that post-credit scene that I'm working on. Those will post really soon too. Everyone click here for my Shang-Chi post-credit scene video, and everyone click here for my full breakdown and Easter eggs for the entire Shang-Chi movie. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.